Hello everyone! In this lesson, we will learn how to work with multiple post types. Let's dive right into the action and jump into our text editor. So here we are within our searchroute.php file that we've been working on for the last couple of lessons. And at the moment, the WP query that we're putting together only looks for posts that are of the post type professor. And clearly, we don't want our search overlay to be limited to only professors, right? We want to search everything on the site. Now, luckily, WordPress makes it very easy to query for multiple post types. Check this out. All we have to do is delete this quotes professor, and in its place, provide an array. And then within the array, we can just say quotes post, comma, page, comma, professor. Right, so we just build an array and list all of the different post types that we want to include. So if I go ahead and save this, and then over in Postman, at the end of our new API URL, if I search for Barks-a-Lot, we still successfully pull in that professor post. But if instead I search for About, as in the About Us page, well, we successfully pull in those results as well. Or I could search for a blog post. So I know I have a post named We Won an Award. So if I search for award, because we included post in our array of post types, we successfully pull in a blog post result. So this is great, and it was very easy to set up. We just set post type to equal an array and list out the post types. However, let me show you something that's less than ideal. So if I search for something like lorem, as in lorem ipsum, just as an example, that's going to return posts from just about every post type. But I don't want all of the JSON for these results to be mixed together like this. Because on our front end, over in the search overlay, I don't want all of the results to just be mixed together in a single list. Instead, I have a vision for a 3-column layout for the results, where the first column will be just posts and pages mixed together, so that will be the general information results. And then the second column will have programs and professors, and then the third column will have campuses and events. So back in our code, instead of placing all of the results posts into this one array, right, into this one big single array, which at the moment is named professor results, right? That's the array that within our while loop, we use array push to push each resulting post onto the end of the array. So what I'm suggesting is instead of just having this one big single array, in order to stay organized, why don't we create multiple subarrays? Or in other words, one array for posts and pages and the general information, and then another array for programs, another array for professors, another array for campuses, and an array for events. So let me show you how I would set that up. First of all, let's do a bit of renaming. This query is no longer just for professors, so let's rename this query object from professors to maybe main query. I just made this name up. You could choose whatever you want, but we do want to match that name down here when we are looping through it. So within our while loop, instead of professors, let's change that to main query. And then on this line, when we call the post, let's change that from professors to main query. And then on a similar note, when it comes to this empty array that we are populating, it doesn't make sense to name it professor results, since it's going to contain all sorts of data. So why don't we rename this empty array to just be named results? Okay, and then down at the very bottom of this file, when we are returning something, instead of trying to return an array that no longer exists, let's return results. Now, I realize that the last minute or two might have been difficult to follow, but I think our next step is going to help clear things up a bit. So check this out. Within this empty array named results, right, this is the array that we're going to populate as we loop through the results. Within this empty array, let's actually drop down in between the parentheses. And what I want to do is build out an associative array where each item contains a different type of content. So for example, we could make up whatever name we want, but let's say general info, and this is where we will place the blog posts and pages. For now, let's set it to equal a temporary X placeholder. Okay, new line. Let's create another item in this array named professors and just set it to equal an X. Okay, and then what other types of content do we have? We have programs, and we have events, and we have campuses. Now, instead of just placeholder X's, I want each one of these X's to be an array, an empty array that we can push onto and populate within our loop. So instead of this X placeholder, just say array, and then do the same thing for these other 4 X's. So you can just copy and paste. Okay, and at this point, I think my game plan is starting to shift into focus. We've got this query that's going to contain results from all different sorts of post types. And then when we loop through it, depending on the post type of the current result, we will just push it into the appropriate empty array. Before we update our loop code, let's be sure to include all post types up in this array. So at the moment, I've got post, page, professor. Let's not forget about program, campus, and event. All right, now the final piece of our puzzle is to update our loop code. So within this while loop down here, this selected code will run once for each post in the results. Only now, instead of pushing on to the end of an array named professor results, let's change this first argument to results, and then you can look inside the array with square brackets, and let's say general info. So this is our way of saying that the array we want to add on to is this one, this empty subarray that lives within the overall results array. Cool, but there's one thing missing. This array push line, we actually want to wrap this within conditional logic, because we only want to add something to the general info array if it's a blog post or a page, right? We want to funnel all of the other content types into their appropriate arrays. So let's do this. Right above this array push line, let's just write an if statement. So if parentheses, curly brackets, and for the condition, we can just say if get post type, which is a WordPress function, so it gets its own set of parentheses. If that equals post, or if get post type equals page, so if the current result is a post or a page, then within the curly brackets for the if statement, let's just cut and paste this array push code. So cut that, paste it in here. Okay, and then we can just duplicate this block of code for each of the other types, like professors, programs, events, and campuses. So I'm just going to copy and paste and duplicate this if statement block of code that we just set up. Copy that, and then right below it, just paste it in again. So this time, let's say if get post type equals professor, and then in this case, we don't need the other or condition. And if that's the case, then the array that we want to push it onto is results, and then the subarray of professors. Right, so big picture, this while loop is going to loop through all of the results. And then with these different if statements, we're just trying to funnel the results into their appropriate locations. So that way, the data that we feed to the REST API is already organized, and it will be super easy to work with within our front-end JavaScript. So let's just finish up and set up a couple additional if statements for the other post types. So I'm just going to copy this right below it, duplicate it. Let's say if get post type equals program, then let's push it onto the array programs. Let's paste it again. If get post type equals campus, then add it to the results campuses subarray. And then finally below this, one more time, if get post type equals event, add it to the events array. Okay, now that we've taken care of all of the different possibilities, let's go ahead and save this and then test it out over in Postman. So if I search for barks a lot, perfect. This is exactly what I would want to see. The only post on our website that matches a search of Barks-a-Lot is a professor post. So here we see it, and then all of our other arrays are empty. So if instead I searched for about, as in the About Us page, we see a few results in the general info array, but all of the others are empty. Cool, so this is going to make it very easy to build out our 3-column layout where we separate the different types of content. And that's exactly what we are going to work on in the next lesson. In the next video, we are going to connect the dots between our front-end overlay JavaScript and the new custom API URL that we've been building. It should be a lot of fun to put everything together, so let's keep rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson.